Hey, soul survivors, we are talking about how narcissism develops. So, these personality traits, some genetics, some people may be genetically predisposed to traits like sensitivity to criticism or a need for admiration, and that alone can lead to narcissism. So, the traits like high extroversion, low agreeableness, and a sense of entitlement can sometimes make somebody more able to develop these narcissistic traits. But there's also things like within the family dynamics. Children who are constantly told they are superior might develop this inflated sense of self importance. Families with blurred boundaries can make children feel entitled, also less empathetic. Alternating between excessive praise and harsh criticism can create a fragile self esteem and a constant need for validation. Now, neglect and abuse does often lead to children developing a grandiose self image as a defense mechanism against feelings of worthlessness. When a child will take on adult roles known as parentification, they can develop a false sense of superiority and self-reliance. So there could be something with birth order or the mental stability of the parents. There's also cultural influences, though, that we need to take into account. Cultures that value individual success and status over community and relationships often encourage these types of narcissistic traits. Being idolized or rejected by peers can contribute. So sometimes it's not about the parents, sometimes it's their friendships or interactions at school. Social media, the focus on the superficial types of success can reinforce narcissistic tendencies. Now, there are psychological theories, a psychoanalytical theory which is based on Freud, and he suggested that narcissism starts when children's needs are either overly gratified or neglected, and that causes them to seek constant admiration. That's why you have a grandiose narcissist and also a vulnerable one, and you have to know that they can fluctuate between the two. They don't always pick just one. So also the attachment theory, secure early attachment, that's crucial for healthy development. Insecure attachment can lead to narcissistic traits. So, how do we prevent or address narcissism? When you have balanced parenting, providing both praise and constructive feedback, that can help the child develop a more realistic sense of self. They're not always going to be the best of the best, and they're definitely not a loser. So having clear boundaries teach children to respect others' needs and perspectives. Don't just give your child what they want. And you can kind of look at the family dynamics of your person. Were they excessively praised, where they could do no wrong, or were they talked down to? You can kind of get a sense for where this is coming from. So consistent support and teaching coping skills helps foster self-esteem. Counseling can help people that do have these narcissistic traits understand and change their behavior. Full-blown narcissistic personality disorder is really hard to break through to those people because it's such a strong defense mechanism. They've been doing it their whole life. People that have developed it later on in life do still have a little bit more empathy. Some narcissists do have a certain amount of empathy, but they have more of a cognitive empathy than a true empathy where they can kind of understand it. They don't usually feel what others feel. And so their interactions aren't going to be as natural or as deep. It's self-protection that they're going through, and they don't want to give that up at all costs. They don't want to accept that they're just a normal human being. They want to be the best of the best because that's what they've been told. And they, of course, that feels good to be the best of the best. So they don't want to be anything less than, or the vulnerable will be that poor pity me and nobody understands me. And that's why they often project that and try to tear other people down to make themselves feel better. So there are two different types of narcissists where, like I said, they can fluctuate. So what about scapegoats? So can a scapegoat turn into a narcissist? So how a scapegoat might turn into a narcissist. They got a defense mechanism, and to cope with the constant blame and criticism, a scapegoat might develop a grandiose self-image as a defense mechanism. This can evolve into narcissistic traits as they try to protect their self-esteem. They will seek validations. Scapegoats often lack the self-worth due to negative treatment. So in their quest for this validation, also for their recognition, they might develop these behaviors to gain the admiration and attention that they were denied, and they crave it. Sometimes scapegoats who escape their toxic environment, they can adopt narcissistic traits as a way to assert control, avoid being victimized again. They don't want to go back to feeling that. And they can overcompensate for the past abuse by becoming overly self-centered. So there are factors contributing to the transformation. Without proper emotional support or intervention, a scapegoat's coping mechanisms might lead them toward narcissistic traits. If the scapegoat already has a predisposition to traits like extroversion or that sensitivity to criticism, they can be more susceptible. Environments that reward narcissistic behavior, such as certain competitive or individualistic cultures, that can further develop these traits. So with the statistic and research, there's not an exact statistic on how many scapegoats can become narcissistic, but the prevalence of narcissistic personality disorder depends on who you talk to. There's a lot of studies that say, 0.5% to 1%. Others say up to 6%. If you follow Dr. Ramani, she says 1 in 6. Sometimes people say 1 in 5, and it's on the rise. She's even said up to 25% of people are narcissists, and at least narcissistic. So research does show people who have childhood abuse or neglect can include being scapegoated or have a higher risk of developing personality disorders. So as an example, one study found that 35% of people with NPD reported a history of childhood trauma. Sometimes people don't recognize it was childhood trauma, or it can happen later on in life. There are studies that suggest the personality disorders, including narcissism, can result from a combination of the genetic predisposition and environmental influences. They say genetics can account for 40 to 60% of the variance in personality traits, while the others are influenced by environmental factors. And of course, it depends on the group that was studied, the cultural differences, what is acceptable, what isn't. So it's really hard to pinpoint a number, but early intervention is important. So if you have a child, you might want to do that. It's really hard when somebody goes through life, they kind of, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So unless a narcissist wants to face all their childhood wounds or wounds that are affecting their personality, sometimes an extreme mortification is the realization that they need to change. Sometimes when people become religious, something's tugging at their heart to change. There's self-awareness, education, supportive relationships. So not all scapegoats become narcissists, but the potential is there. So that's something to think about. So if you've struggled with some of the things in your childhood, that understanding yourself or understanding your siblings can lead to some encouragement and some, support. It would be really nice if we could all just, work through our issues and come out on ahead. But it's almost ingrained in a narcissist. And even when they do try to get better, it's ingrained in them. And during times of stress is when you're going to see it rear its ugly head. That's when people dig deep into their core to do their survival techniques. And it's going to come out. It's going to come out. And, I've seen other YouTubers that were diagnosed with narcissism, And they even say that they're struggling with that and they just want to go right back to that. So there are times that they can do better, but narcissism is extremely, extremely dangerous to your health if you are dealing with a narcissist. And even if it's not somebody who has full-blown NPD, narcissistic traits are something that we should release from ourselves, and also set up those boundaries and hold people accountable so they're not enabled to continue treating people this way. It's really hard to do when not everybody is on board with that, where some people, the new supply or family members, they don't want to deal with it. And so they allow certain bad behaviors, but it causes physical ailments, it causes brain damage to us, it causes all these kind of things. So if you are stuck in rumination or that trauma bond, that we have to get to the bottom of that to deal with it. And it can be quite painful and quite hard to accept. So we have to realize it's not about us, that, it's not that we weren't worthy of love. It's that the narcissist didn't have the capability to give it. So it has nothing to do with you. If you were a healthy person going into this relationship, most likely you came out anxious. And that's part of the reason why a lot of times people are like, was I the narcissist? Because we become in a state of need. And you also, you hear the narcissist saying that you're too needy, or they don't even talk to you when you get into that needier state. And that's a trauma response. So give yourself some grace that, part of that was the lack of boundaries and unwillingness to walk away when needed. And, we have to find happiness within ourselves. I know a lot of us are loyal, but are we being loyal to people who are loyal to us? Because a narcissist can turn on a dime. A lot of them will cheat or discard or lie or confuse you. That gaslighting is terrible. So I take topic requests to help you work through this. And it's really hard to realize that we loved our abuser. And, they always say that love is a true two-way street. And that's something I struggle with because, is that transactional. So I feel you can love someone, whether they love you back or not. Some people aren't going to agree with that statement, but do we have to continue in those toxic relationships? So just like if you loved strawberries, but strawberries are toxic to you, you can still love them, but don't ingest them because it's toxic to you. So if you're loving somebody who is toxic to you, whether it's a two-way street, one-way street, if it is toxic, it will manifest into physical diseases. It will destroy your relationships with others because you're going to become anxious or depressed, not living your full life. So in a relationship, there are going to be ups and downs. Don't just give up on somebody because they made one mistake or they got selfish one time or you didn't see eye to eye. But if it is a consistent pattern and none of your needs are being met or so few of it, unless you can accept that that's the way of life and you're okay with it, but know what your worth is. And when we show when we believe in ourselves with our worth, that it kind of lets other people know that we know what we're valued at. And that helps them see the value in us. Because if they don't see, if they see us not valuing ourselves, where sex is easy, or I'll give you money real easy, you don't pay me back, whatever, or I'll come help you, you don't have to help me, they're going to start taking advantage of that. So know your worth. Give what you can, but don't be taken advantage of, because narcissists will bleed you dry financially, emotionally, And, with the cheating, things like that, they can really damage you. And you deserve to be safe, to be loved. And I'm here to help you. Topic requests are welcome. One-on-ones are available. And please hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.